Good morning. A warm welcome to the Humanist community in Silicon Valley's Sunday Forum. To all those joining us this morning, my name is Ray Sunby, President of the Humanist community. The Humanist community is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. Humanism is a secular and reality-based philosophy of life that affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. We value freedom, health, happiness, fairness, compassion, and using science and reason to acquire and apply knowledge. If these words describe your thinking, we invite you to become a member of the Humanist community if you have not yet done so. A special welcome to those who are with us for the first time. We invite you to continue listening to our weekly forums and other events. Please aid us in continuing to present these forums by donating to the Humanist community. Membership forms, a list of upcoming events, information about donating, and other information can be found on our website, www.humanists.org. That's www.humanistsplural.org.
Okay, good morning. My name is Alex Havasi. I'm Vice President of the Humanist community. Our presentation this morning will be a talk by the President of the Humanist Society and Humanist Celebrant, Kathy Dietrich. She'll be sharing the who, what, why, how, and so on of Humanist Celebrants, along with stories and pictures of her experience creating and offering different kinds of ceremonies. Also, if you'd like to speak at a Humanist forum or know someone who would, or there's a topic you think we should discuss, please let me know. You can email me at vp@humanist.org or at havasi@live.org. Elections to the board of the Humanist community will be held in February. If you'd consider serving on the board, contact me at vp@humanist.org and I will pass it on to the nominating committee. As I said earlier, at this Sunday meeting, we have a speaker, Kathy Dietrich, who's, as I said, is president of the Humanist Society, and she's going to discuss Humanist Celebrants.
There.
Good.
We've got it now. Technology is great when it works for us. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for inviting me to speak with you today about Humanist Celebrants. It is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I have been a Humanist Celebrant since 2009. I've done over 475 ceremonies of all kinds to date, and I'm currently serving as president of the Humanist Society. As I'm sure many of you know, the Humanist Society is an adjunct organization to the AHA. So we have our own board of directors, our own bylaws, and we operate pretty independently of the Humanists, or of the American Humanist Association, except that they do provide staff support to us, which we greatly appreciate. My URL is there because I do have a business entity around my Humanist Celebrant work. So if anybody wants to check out more about that, you're welcome to. And just to position me, I am located in Rochester, Minnesota. So the need for Humanist Celebrants. Humanist Celebrants are endorsed by the Humanist Society to provide ceremony services to humanists and others seeking secular ceremonies to mark important moments in life. 28% of Americans currently identify as nuns based on the Pew Research study. NONES, nuns, can be atheist, agnostic, humanist, or other secular designations, or those who hold some belief in the supernatural but don't have a religious community. So it is kind of a mixed bag. The number of nuns is growing, especially among younger people. Religions have taken on the job or the joy, depending on how you want to look at it, of celebrating life's milestone moments, including birth, death, marriage, and that just doesn't fit very well for we non-religious people. With the increase in nuns, we are seeing an increasing desire for personalized, meaningful secular ceremonies. Now, not everyone appreciates or wants a ceremony to mark milestone moments in life, and that's perfectly okay. But for those who do, we want ones that reflect our values, our experiences, and our personalities. Humanist celebrants respond to those wishes. We've noticed that more states are limiting online ordinations, North Carolina being one of the more recent ones. And we want to make sure that people understand that the Humanist Celebrant endorsement is not an online ordination and is recognized in all 50 states. We'll talk about the process to become a Humanist Celebrant at the end of the presentation today. Humanist celebrants are also an option for interfaith couples. Some couples in this situation prefer to avoid possible conflicts and have a secular ceremony, and Humanist celebrants can meet that need. There is a need for celebrants in all locales serving all clients, and most metro areas have some amount of Humanist celebrants, but in rural, remote, and southern areas of our country, it can be hard to find Humanist celebrants or others who are willing to perform secular ceremonies. It can also be a challenge to find officiants to serve the LGBTQIA+ communities, and Humanist celebrants, of course, are happy to provide that service as it's absolutely consistent with our humanist values. They say variety is the spice, and that certainly applies for Humanist celebrants. Each celebrant gets to define their own practice. They can decide who they serve, and that ranges from celebrants who serve a very small slice of life, family, friends, and maybe their secular communities. And then we have other celebrants who market their services very widely and are willing to serve anyone who's seeking a secular or humanist ceremony. Celebrants in this case often have websites like I do. They make venue connections. They network within their communities. They may even do a wedding trade show kind of thing, set up a booth to make sure that people know that they're there and available to do secular ceremonies. How many ceremonies they do, 1 or 2 a year, and some people do 50 or more, and how they engage with potential clients. This really depends on what kinds of ceremonies they're offering. For simple, quick turnaround marriage, it could be a phone call or an email exchange and you get together and do the ceremony. For full custom ceremonies, larger, more elaborate weddings, memorials, baby namings, that usually includes an in-person or video initial consultation with email or phone follow-up. So they also get to decide what kinds of ceremonies they offer. Some specialize and only offer weddings or only offer memorials, and others offer ceremonies across the life cycle. So what are those types of weddings that celebrants can choose to offer? Of course, weddings is always at the top of the list. It is the ceremony that is most often requested. And it can range from simple certificate signings where the couple just wants to be legally married to elopement style ceremonies, what I think of as the short and sweet option, or full custom ceremonies. Memorial services and all other kinds of ceremonies except weddings do not require any kind of a legal credential to perform that ceremony. That's only true for weddings. So with memorial services and everything else, anyone could provide those ceremonies, but Humanist celebrants are well positioned and prepared to offer a wonderful professional ceremony. Baby namings or welcomings, these are often held, especially I find, if family members would be expecting a baptism or a christening or a bris, and they're usually smaller, informal family gatherings, often held right at home. These three, weddings, memorials, and baby namings, are sometimes referred to as the big three in ceremony circles or cradle to grave ceremonies. And they do account for the vast majority of ceremonies that Humanist celebrants offer. However, there are many other possibilities. Coming of age ceremonies serve the same purpose as a bar or bat mitzvah or a quinceañera. They celebrate a transition between childhood and adulthood, or the acceptance of an increased level of responsibility in the honorees' lives. Housewarmings and house leavings to celebrate a new home or to ease a transition to a new living situation. Housewarmings are a big thing in some cultures, so humanist celebrants provide a secular option. House leavings are becoming more common with our aging population in recognition of the trauma that some people feel when leaving a home that they've lived in for much of their lives, and ceremony can help ease that transition. And then there's milestone birthdays. If you're celebrating 16, 18, 21, or a new decade, 40, 50, and especially for older people who are reaching later milestones, these celebrations and ceremonies can be truly wonderful. Beyond those, any important life event can be celebrated or recognized with ceremony. A quick note about pet memorials. More and more people view their pets as an integral part of their family. So a pet memorial is another kind of ceremony that can help with the grief people feel when they lose a pet. To help you get a better feel for the work humanist celebrants do for the big three, weddings, memorials, and baby welcomings, I'm going to share some pictures and stories from my experiences. We'll start with weddings, since they do account for more than 90% of the ceremonies that I personally do, and there's just an awful lot to share. Generally, my process to create a wedding ceremony goes roughly this way. I meet with the couple to learn what they want in their ceremony and to ensure that they are seeking a secular ceremony. State laws don't actually require much in the content of a wedding ceremony, mostly just that the couple says they want to be married to each other in some way. So the rest of the ceremony should be only the elements that the couple values. Most commonly, a ceremony I write will include a love story, which takes the place of a sermon or a homily in a religious ceremony. It talks about the couple's journey to this moment, their love for each other, their hopes for their future, those kinds of things. It might include a secular reading, poetry or prose. I have a library of literally hundreds that range from ancient Persian poets to Dr. Seuss and everything in between. Of course, an exchange of vows, optionally a ring exchange, a unity ritual, and we'll talk more about those in a bit, and a pronouncement of marriage, introduction of the couple, and an invitation to kiss. Once a couple has booked with me, which involves signing a ceremony, agreement, or contract, and paying a retainer to hold the date on my calendar, I ask them to fill out couple questionnaires so that I can get to know them a little better and reflect them and personalize their ceremony. And then I write the first draft of the ceremony. I send the ceremony draft to the couple and they are free to change anything that they wish, and we iterate on that ceremony until they approve the final version. This is my process, but as I said earlier, each humanist celebrant can define their own practice, which includes how they create ceremony. Some have a library of ceremony sections that are pre-written that a couple can choose from, and then the celebrant smooths the language so that it all flows. Others invite the couple to write parts of the ceremony themselves. This is why I think it's important for couples to meet with potential officiants before selecting one to make sure that they fit the style and will deliver the ceremony that the couple wants. So this first set of wedding pictures shows three brothers and their brides. I married Chad and Angie back in 2012, and at that wedding, I met Ross and Emily, who were newly engaged. They asked me to marry them the next year. That's them at the top. And then I was pleased to hear from Cole and Devin a few years later and married them in 2018. I've become their family celebrant for weddings, and I hope to hear from the youngest brother someday when he has found his person. Humanists and secular people of all stripes usually don't have an established relationship with a celebrant. So it means a lot when members of a family who know your work come back to you again and again. A wide variety of couples seek the services of Humanist Celebrants. These pictures show just a sampling of the couples I've had the privilege to work with. On the far left is a couple who worked for a Renaissance festival and wanted a themed wedding that reflected their passion for all things medieval. In addition to dressing the part, we included a whiskey sharing unity ritual. Tying a couple's interests, hobbies, or passions into their ceremony is a great way to make it uniquely theirs. I had a couple that were all about cars. We used the life of a car as a metaphor for marriage, and it worked really well. The couple at the top center wanted a low-key ceremony with only a handful of guests. They were both members of AA, and at their request, we spoke to some of the parallels between some of the 12 steps in their program and marriage. The couples I've married in small, intimate ceremonies like this cross all ages, are first or subsequent marriages, and dress informally or in full traditional wedding clothes. They often follow the ceremony with a restaurant meal to celebrate and then just go on with their lives. The couple at the top right image represent the interfaith or religious couples who seek a secular ceremony. The groom was Catholic in this case, and the bride Muslim. They wanted to focus on their love and all that they saw that was positive in their relationship without trying to please relatives from varying religious traditions. I've also had my services requested by divorced Catholics seeking to remarry, which they cannot do in their church, and lapsed couples of varying denominations who have been refused marriage by their religious communities. All of these couples want a meaningful ceremony, often with a larger guest list than a justice of the peace or other government official will offer. The couple in the photo in the lower right is one of my COVID couples. I provided ceremony services when we could gather only with the couple and their 2 required legal witnesses in Minnesota. We met outside in January, or with a group of less than 10 when that was required by state mandates. Some couples planned and replanned their wedding day multiple times, and wherever they landed, I provided their ceremony. Like this couple pictured, some dressed as they had planned to for a full ceremony, while others opted for a simple certificate signing ceremony in 2020, followed by a full ceremony in 2021 when they could have the wedding day that they had originally planned. The final picture on this slide in the center bottom is one of my favorite couples. Please meet Francie and Mary. Before the Supreme Court ruled on marriage equality, some states had passed laws allowing same-sex couples to marry. Minnesota was one of them, but Wisconsin, our neighboring state to the east, was not. The Mississippi River is the borderline between our 2 states, and this couple lived right along the river, but in Wisconsin. They had a beautiful mansion venue in Wisconsin that they wanted to use for their wedding, but couldn't be legally married there. So we devised a plan for a 2-state wedding. We gathered the couple with their legal Minnesota paperwork and their 2 witnesses and me on the bluffs of the river on the Minnesota side and did a simple certificate signing to take care of the legalities. Then we all drove across the river to the venue where the guests were gathered and did a full ceremony. It was one of the most joyous ceremonies I've officiated, as these women who had been together for over 20 years and who had not believed that marriage would ever be an option for them, celebrated their love and commitment with their family and friends. There was a flurry of same-sex marriages after marriage equality became law across the United States, and I especially loved being able to marry couples of long standing like Mary and Francie. Creating a ritual that is totally unique to the couple is a great way to customize a marriage ceremony. The Turkish coffee ritual setup that you see on the right side of this screen and the actual ritual in action during the ceremony shown on the left is one of the more elaborate that I've ever written. In this case, the groom was an immigrant from Turkey. He met his future wife when his mother invited the neighbor over for Turkish coffee one day. The neighbor, of course, was the soon-to-be bride. Turkish coffee was a daily ritual that the groom had grown up with, and soon the couple was coming together over Turkish coffee to share the news of each day. When they shared this with me at our first consultation, I knew they needed to perform the ritual as part of their ceremony. So early in the ceremony, we explained the history to the guests and started to heat the water. Just before their vows, they added the coffee, and after the ring exchanged, the coffee was ready, and they each prepared a cup for the other, knowing how they each preferred it with milk or sugar or both. The symbolism of the daily ritual, the communication and sharing that they prioritized each day, along with the respectful preparation of the coffee for each other, worked well. It worked really well at the ceremony, but I loved hearing from the bride afterward when she shared that many of the guests on the groom's side didn't speak much English. They loved seeing one of their cultural traditions integrated into the ceremony and felt more connected to what was going on and more respected and included in the day. What a win. Here are some other personal rituals I've written for couples through the years. Going from left to right. This couple was going to be serving hot toddies as their signature drink at their reception, so we had them assemble one as their unity ritual. The metaphor for marriage was easy to explain. The sweetness of the sugar, the tartness of the lemon, joined with the strength of the alcohol and the heat of the water. The top picture can be a little difficult to make out. It's 2 milk glasses along with a plate of Oreo cookies and cinnamon biscotti. This couple shared milk and cookies when they got home from evening work shifts. She needed almond milk. He used cow's milk. He liked Oreo cookies. She liked the biscotti. We talked about respecting each other's needs and preferences and retaining their individuality in marriage, which was especially important to this couple. The suitcase on the upper right was used to collect mementos during a ceremony. The couple placed an engagement picture and a wedding invitation to remember the early part of their story, and then added items that reflected goals and activities they wanted to share in marriage. As they began their marriage journey with their wedding ceremony, they packed their bag to build successful marriage they envisioned. The lower right photo is also a fun one. It's a ritual that the couple already knew they wanted to include when we first spoke. They were both pharmacists. They had met during their training. For the ritual, they wanted to blend different colored tablets in a large mortar and pestle, demonstrating their joining in marriage. It was perfect for them, and they carried the theme on into their reception. So these are examples of custom rituals. Of course, there are other rituals: candle lightings, sand blendings, tree plantings, wine sharings, which can all be customized for the couple based on the words that the celebrant puts around the actual ritual. The last idea on weddings that I wanted to share with you goes beyond the couple. Weddings are certainly an opportunity for couples to voice their commitment to each other in front of the people most important in their world. but they are also an opportunity for guests to show their support for the couple. It's not unusual for couples to express concern to me about some particular important relative, often a grandparent, that they will react negatively to the couple choosing a secular ceremony. Interestingly enough, my experience has been that these very grandparents have repeatedly come up to me after the ceremony to share that this was one of the best weddings they've ever been to. My belief is that this happens because the ceremony is focused on their beloved grandchild, and it hopefully represented them authentically. It may also be the first wedding they've been to that didn't include a cookie cutter format where only the names change from ceremony to ceremony. If, for example, the grandparent was Catholic, they've probably been to dozens of Catholic weddings over the years and can predict what's going to happen from moment to moment. It's also wonderful to include more than just the couple in the actual wedding ceremony. In the upper right, the groom's daughter is helping with their hand fasting ceremony. After she connected the couple, she added her hands, and I connected all three of them. The large image in the center was from a family sand ceremony, which is a great option for blended families that even small children can participate in. It's also great to include all the guests in the ceremony in some way. This can be done verbally by inviting them to respond to a request to support the couple in married life, to surround them with love, to respect them as a married couple, and to support them as they pursue their goals and dreams. But the lower left picture is a picture of a tree that was bare. The branches were bare at the start of the ceremony. Because this gathering had only about 40 guests, we were able to include a musical interlude in the ceremony, followed by an exchange of vows and rings, where each guest came forward and placed a thumbprint leaf on the tree as a visual sign of their presence and support for the couple. The music that backed this activity was significant to the couple, and at the end, all the guests joined in the final chorus spontaneously. The box of stones on the lower right could be used for either a small, intimate ceremony or a larger gathering. Each guest takes a stone as they enter the ceremony space. During the ceremony, they're asked to imbue the stone with good wishes for the couple and for the success of their marriage. The rest of the ritual depends on the number of guests. If it's a small group, they can come forward and place their stone in a container at the front and voice their wish out loud to the couple. If it's a large group, guests can leave their stones in a special container as they leave the ceremony space. At the end of the day, the couple keeps the container of stones as a memento of the love and support that surrounded them on their day. Okay, so that's a lot of talk about weddings. The second most common request that Humanist Celebrants get is to lead memorial service. I don't have a lot of pictures from memorials I've officiated because frankly, they just aren't often picture-taking events. But memorials in some ways are even more important than weddings. Memorials force us to face our mortality. Religious platitudes and beliefs are often rife at memorials, making them challenging to attend, but it doesn't have to be that way. Two things have had a major impact on the location and timing of memorial services: cremation and COVID. COVID restrictions limited the size of memorial gatherings, and many people chose to delay the service until family and friends could gather. Cremation, which is now the choice of the majority of Americans, also frees us from the historical cadence where the service and burial happened within days of the death. The geographical spread of families is another factor leading to a later schedule for the service. I officiated a memorial for a woman who died in July one year. She was cremated, And the first time the family could be together was in October. So that's when we held her service. Location is another aspect of memorial services that is easier with the Humanist Celebrant. Many funeral homes now have ceremony spaces that can be used. Beyond that, memorial services can be held outdoors in parks or on beaches. Space can be reserved in private rooms at restaurants, golf clubs, or museums. Basically, any space can be used. No matter where or when a memorial service is held, the purpose is the same. Obviously, we're not sending the person who died on to heaven or a future life. Rather, we're focused on celebrating the life and the impact the person had while alive. We are there to support others who are grieving the loss of the person and to receive support ourselves. And most importantly, we are there to say our final goodbyes. With the prevalence of the terminology celebration of life and the focus that that brings, it's possible to forget that last one, to say our final goodbyes. It's important to make space for people to feel and acknowledge the feelings of sadness, loss, and grief. Ignoring them won't help and can, in fact, increase feelings of aloneness or guilt. So what does a memorial service led by a humanist celebrant include? There are no rules, and the content and flow should be defined by the loved ones with guidance from the celebrant. Commonly, the service will include secular poetry or prose consistent with our humanist values. It will include eulogies or remembrances from a handful of people who knew the deceased in a variety of roles: mother, friend, volunteer, grandmother, employee, etc. And ideally, it will close on a note of hope that leaves the guests able to leave the service still sad at the loss they are feeling, but ready to move forward. The ceremony may include a video montage of photos from the person's life, often backed by music. Music is a powerful emotional force, and well-chosen music can really enhance a memorial service. One memorial I did used Dixieland music at the end of the ceremony. Not a traditional choice at all, but fitting for the man being honored who loved the genre and even played in a Dixieland band for a number of years. Using meaningful music throughout the ceremony is a great way to customize it. Either a favorite genre or favorite songs, even if not traditional funeral music, can be used. There are also humanist standards like John Lennon's Imagine or It's a Wonderful World that work well at memorials. One memorial I attended began with the 12 grandchildren of the woman being commemorated entering each with an object that represented their grandma to them. From books to fishing rods to chocolate bars to suitcases, these objects brought her life to life with nary a word said. Objects can also be placed in front and used as touch points as the story of the life being honored is shared. I offered a memorial service for a young man who died in a motorcycle accident. He was also an avid hunter. His family invited all of the attendees to wear camo clothing in his honor. Not being a hunter myself, I opted for a bit of camo ribbon on my black suit as a way of supporting the request. And a memorial for a woman known to always wear bright red lipstick invited all guests who chose to wear red lipstick to the memorial service. Neither request from these families was traditional, but both honored the person in visible ways and brought guests together. Coming full circle from the story I told about becoming a family's wedding celebrant, I've also become another family's memorial celebrant. I've officiated for the family patriarch, matriarch, and their daughter. The daughter initially found me via Google when her dad, who was in hospice at the time, told her that he wanted a humanist memorial service. She had never heard of humanism, but was to discover that her father was a lifelong member of the American Humanist Association. He lived his humanism without ever talking about it, even with his family. He was an immigrant from the Netherlands after World War II. He became an American citizen and loved his adopted country. He took his children to visit most of the 50 states as he instilled the values of this country and of humanism in them. Unfortunately, it was only a few years after his death that his daughter lost her battle with cancer, and I was called on to create her memorial service. There we honored her work to create a strong, blended family. Friends and work colleagues recalled her positive and driving personality. Her children and grandchildren lit candles to remember the love and warmth she always showed them. And then in 2019, I was contacted by the son in the family. His mom, the matriarch, had just died following an 8-year battle with Alzheimer's. He was struggling with how to have a memorial service for her that didn't focus on all of her that they had lost during those final years. We acknowledged the Alzheimer's early in the ceremony and then transitioned to focus on all the wonderful parts of her that people had known and loved and all the influence she had had on her family and friends. The picture in this slide is from her memorial service. I took it with permission of the family to show the beautiful floral arrangement around the urn. It was made by her granddaughter, who is a florist. She used tulips in honor of the home country of her grandma, the Netherlands. Beyond being the most beautiful arrangement of its kind that I've ever seen, it's also an example of customization at a memorial service. It was a labor of love by the granddaughter that was perfectly authentic for the grandmother. Baby welcomings are the last of the big 3 kinds of ceremonies I want to share with you today. As I mentioned earlier, they're not all that common, but can be a wonderful family moment that welcomes a new little one. Baby welcoming ceremonies are generally short, 15-20 minutes max, since the unpredictable little one is the center of the ceremony. They are often held at home and include a small guest list of mostly or exclusively close family members and friends. They usually happen on the weekend and are scheduled around what is likely to be a good time for the honoree, meaning around nap time and meal times. A baby welcoming ceremony usually includes promises the parents want to make to the child, the naming of guide parents or mentors for the child, a secular reading, a ritual of some kind, and a closing. They can also include a role for grandparents, especially if this is a first grandchild, and a role for any older siblings. If the child is very young or if their name has special significance, a naming element can also be included. The pictures here are 3 examples of rituals for welcoming ceremonies. On the left is a tree that was planted by the parents during the ceremony. Known as Lennon's tree for baby Lennon, we envisioned it growing with her as she grows through the years. The cards on the tree are wishes for her future, written by each of the family members who attended. During the ceremony, they were each invited forward to share their wish with Lennon and her parents, and then place the card on the tree. The center picture is a puzzle the parents had made with pictures of the family holding little Cooper. During the ceremony, family members placed the puzzle piece with their picture into the frame and placed a letter they wrote to Cooper into a binder. And the final picture shows baby Kira's feet being immersed in a bowl of water. What you don't see very well are the stones at the bottom of the bowl. The stones were held by all attendees, imbued with their wishes for cura, and dropped into the bowl in the lead up to this moment. Water is a common material used in baptisms and christenings, but is also recognized as a natural element in our world. It is an essential part of life and growth and can be worked into secular ceremonies pretty easily. You'll note that in all three of these cases, there is a memento of the baby welcoming that can be shared with the child when they are older. I always mention in my welcoming ceremonies that the baby or young child won't remember the ceremony, but it can be shared with them via the notes, puzzles, or decorative stones when they are older. A final note, the idea behind baby welcomings can be adapted to create a ceremony that celebrates an adoption of any age child into a family, or even into a transgender naming ceremony. You're limited only by your and your celebrants' creativity. So now you know who Humanist Celebrants are, why we're needed, some of the meaningful, creative, and personal ways we can honor milestone moments in life in ways that are consistent with our humanist values in secular ceremonies. If you're interested in becoming a Humanist Celebrant, here's how to begin. The qualifications we're looking for are a strong understanding of humanist values, strong public speaking skills, the ability to perform at least one ceremony a year, and ongoing membership in the AHA to demonstrate your interest in growing your understanding of humanism. If you have those qualifications, please go to thehumanistsociety.org/celebrants/apply to learn more and complete and submit the online application. It includes essay-style questions where you'll be asked to reflect on the Humanist Manifesto and discuss how humanism impacts your life. We also ask that you have 3 people provide references for you by completing a very brief online form. We're basically looking for character references, so these can come from various parts of your life. They don't have to be from other humanists. Once your AHA membership is confirmed and your application and references are complete, a staff member will contact you for a phone interview. Then your entire application package is sent to the Humanist Society Board, who reviews each celebrant and chaplain package, and we vote to endorse or decline endorsement for you. The majority of our applicants receive initial endorsement. Initial endorsement is valid for 2 years, at which time you must apply for re-endorsement. At that point, we're looking for your continued growth in humanism through education or activities, and to confirm that you're doing at least one ceremony a year. Renewals are valid for 5 years from that point on. A couple of final notes on endorsements. We do offer an Associate Humanist Celebrant endorsement that is valid for 90 days. The application process is the same. This credential is targeted to humanists who are asked to do a ceremony for a friend or family member, but who don't plan to continue to offer ceremonies over time. There are a variety of resources and educational options available to humanist celebrants to help you learn how to create and offer ceremonies in a professional way. We also have a closed Facebook group for peer support and have quarterly Zoom sessions targeting subjects of interest to celebrants. So that's what I have for you today, and I would be happy to take questions or comments, discussion of any kind.
I don't want to start off, but I can talk about in central Minnesota some legal developments that might be of interest to the group.
Okay.
but I really don't have anything to say about, the ceremonies or rituals or anything.
I am. Muted.
Alita, not saying anything.
Oh, there's
Maybe
my
he's
hand.
about to.
Dana, Greg, did you want to say something? You're muted.
Yes, I wanted to thank you for a wonderful presentation. It was just so large and covered so many aspects and so many possible scenarios. So very, very interesting. And, it really is very important to people to have occasions celebrated. I think to some people more than others, but it's certainly a wonderful work. And I can see that you're just using a lot of creativity and imagination in carrying this out. And I want to thank you.
Thank you very much. And you're right, ceremony is more important for some people than others, but the major milestone moments in life do really benefit from being honored. Thank you. I'm seeing a question on how does the process for certifying a humanist chaplain differ from the process for certifying a humanist celebrant? The overall process in terms of applications and interviews and board reviews is the same. The big difference is the qualifications. To be a humanist chaplain, you must have more formal education in chaplaincy, including a number of CPUs that are coordinated with national chaplain organizations to make sure that when you are in a hospital or prison or hospice situation dealing with people, that you know what you're doing, basically. So we ask for a degree, either an MDiv or a degree in psychology, counseling, social work, and then the additional specific CPU training from the chaplain organizations. Well, as I said, I would encourage anyone and everyone who was tickled a little bit by what I had to share today to consider applying to be a celebrant. Even if you're doing 1 or 2 ceremonies a year, even if you're only serving your local community, it's really wonderful work. You have the opportunity to have a significant impact on people at the very most important moments in their life. So please consider becoming a celebrant. If you have any questions or would like to discuss anything further with me, I would be happy to do so. I can put my email address in the chat room. I will do that.
Are humanist celebrants certified in every state?
The Humanist Celebrant endorsement is recognized in all states. As a celebrant, you still need to understand what additional requirements your state may put on wedding officiants. So if you're going to be doing weddings, for example, in Minnesota, I needed to register my Humanist Celebrant credential with the county. In California, it may be very different. I really don't know your state requirements. If you want to check out what your state requires, the easiest way to do that is type into Google California marriage requirements, and it'll bring up the marriage statute for your state, and you can check it all out there. That'll tell you what you have to do as an officiant. It'll tell you how many witnesses need to be there, all those good kinds of things. It'll tell you how long a marriage license is good for, which varies wildly from state to state. In Minnesota, if you get a marriage certificate, it's good for 6 months. You go across the river in Wisconsin, they're good for 30 days.
That's the certificate to perform a wedding, not the length of the wedding.
If
Right.
if there's any interest, now might be a convenient time to provide some information about the legal developments in central Minnesota.
Sure.
Okay. When I first came to Minnesota, a lot of secular weddings were being performed by a member of Humanists MN, which is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. And they were being performed by Paul Heffron, who received a certification through the Quakers, actually, of which he had formerly been a member. But when we get to about, I'm not sure, more than 5 years ago, but I'm not sure how far back it goes, maybe 8, there was interest in 2 atheist groups in getting wedding celebrants. The largest was Minnesota Atheists. And then there was a splinter group called Atheists for Human Rights. And they took different approaches. Minnesota, the requirements for Minnesota celebrants are spelled out in section or statute 517, I believe it is. And this provides some general things about a judge or official of the court, or some reference to the school for the deaf, and then there's a separate section that delineates other groups such as Muslims or Hindus, American Indians, and so on. And the 2 groups had different ideas. Minnesota Atheists wanted additional text written into the section to specify what an atheist had to do to become a legal celebrant in Minnesota. With the involvement of Atheists for Human Rights actually occurred when one of their members, a Welsh stonemason named John Dingley, was asked by a friend if he could officiate their wedding. And Marie Castle, who is the leader of Atheists for Human Rights, just wrote up a certificate for him as showing certification by Atheists for Human Rights, and gave it to him. And I don't know what county he went to, but they accepted it without question. So another member, whose name was Sybil, and I've forgotten her last name. I used to call her Sybil Disobedience, but she wanted to become a celebrant. She went to Washington County, and the first clerk was filling everything out without question, but then another got involved who said that it did not meet the requirements of statute 517. So Atheists for Human Rights took Washington County to court. And the Washington County gave in, surrendered the point before the judge made a ruling. So the lawyer for Atheists for Human Rights, Randall Teig, couldn't collect any money from them. But so that's the involvement of Atheists for Human Rights, as far as I know. Now, Minnesota atheists had believed that the statute should be rewritten so that atheist organizations are mentioned in it. And August Berkshire and Stephanie Zavon were the leaders of that attempt. And they were planning to make sure the press was out and have a certification made up and have it rejected and make a big deal of this. But that didn't actually happen. Things sort of died off for a while. But recently, Steve Adams, who's the husband of Minnesota Atheists chair of the board, Heather Hagee. He got certified at the First Unitarian Society after taking a course by the American Humanist Association. And so he got certification, but he did present a certificate from Minnesota Atheists. And I believe that was right in Minneapolis, but that also was accepted. And so he's performed a couple of secular weddings. So I don't know if that's the last word that we've heard about the saga of certifying secular celebrants in Minnesota, but so Minnesota Atheists are in business of certifying celebrants now.
Oh, thanks, George.
One thing that in general we're seeing across the country is that county clerks, who are usually the people that process the marriage certificates, are very hesitant and are being directed by their county attorneys to be very lenient on what they accept as a religious credential.
Mhm.
Because of religious freedom, who's to say your religion's valid and mine isn't? So with that kind of a current environment in the county clerk offices, we're seeing a lot of things being approved that may not be in pure compliance with state statutes. And that's actually some of the history behind why some states are trying to clamp down on online ordinations. They don't want the person being able to go out to the Universal Life Church online and in 10 minutes with zero anything, money, time, education, nothing, become a minister. So each state is dealing with this differently. Some are more lenient, some are just trying to ignore it, and some are actively trying to shut down those online ordinations. There are a couple states, New Jersey has actually put into law a requirement or an acceptance of civil celebrants. So there is another version, flavor of all of this that's going on. You know, personally, in my mind, it would be ideal if there wasn't a religious requirement in any of the states that an officiant be associated with a religion. Separation of church and state tells me that these should be separate things. But we are historically kind of grandfathered into this mess. And the Humanist Society, historically, back in the early 1900s, was incorporated as a religious organization. That's why we can endorse people and have our endorsement be viewed as an ordination equivalent and be accepted by all the states. Some people who are non-religious, it doesn't sit well that it's tied to a religious organization. And personally, I'd love to see it not be that way, but I'm willing to put up with that little bit of discomfort in order to be able to make sure that people can get the kind of secular ceremonies they want.
I haven't attended a lot of funerals, but I've attended them only since I moved out to California. And they all seem to pretty much follow a pattern of discussing the deceased and pointing out features of his life. And I always find them very interesting because I'm humbled by the lives of people I've known all along without realizing what they've accomplished and what they've done.
I'd like to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Alex and I were married in a humanist ceremony. It started because we just wanted to do something neat, and we were at a conference, and one of the national conferences, and a friend of mine who is a celebrant asked me if I would be willing to be part of a thing of demonstrating what this would be like. And I said, I'd only do it if it's the real thing. I don't want to be participating in something that's just a sham. So we did it by mail, we were there, but we had to arrange everything at long distance, which was a challenge. And there were things I would have done differently. But one thing that really stood out that people liked was that Alex is a very elegant looking person, and he has a petite little elegant daughter. And she came to me and said, in the name of all my family, I welcome you as one of us. And then my son, who was a tall, redheaded Scotsman, came to her and said, in the name of all my family, I welcome you as one of us. And then we dressed appropriately. Didn't do a full thing, but I wore the clan sash, and Alex was elegant as usual, and he had people that were friends of ours that we had the group of friends that we picked the ones for each side that would personify the theme. So it was really wonderful. And at one of those conferences, they addressed. A group of us were. I guess it was Anyway, a group of us were addressed by the high and mighty, and told that we were not to use minister because I forget what she said, but everybody was outraged. If ministers have a certain power, they're recognized everywhere, and say what a minister is, they know what a minister is. And to have to say we were a celebrant, it sounds as though you're party to a wingding, just didn't set with us. And I see they didn't care about that, though. They continued to require that we be called celebrants after that day. Anyway, it's been a very long and good association. We had our marriage 30 years ago. We actually got married with a minister first. We went to Carson, Nevada, or somewhere, and got married legally because we wanted to get it done before the end of the year. And then we went back and did the real thing at the next conference, and people were very impressed. In fact, the woman who did the ceremony is she's still around, and I don't know if she's still doing ceremonies, but she's a remarkable person. And one of the men in the audience had the same reaction that I had when I first met her. He said, "Who is this woman and where does she hang out?" And that was exactly the reaction I had to her. So that was neat. And anyway, they ended up getting married. So anyway, that's my story.
Yeah.
And thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Well, thank you very much. And you're right, Sina, they did kind of sunset the term humanist minister. I think it was back in the 60s or 70s. It was before my time as a celebrant, and have adopted the humanist celebrant nomenclature. I think it's a desire to separate from religion as much as possible, but you're right, the term minister is much better understood, although celebrant actually is used by an awful lot of religions these days too, so it all works. George, you've got...
Oh, sorry.
George has his hand up. Or sorry, Greg has his hand up.
Yes.
Yes, I was wondering if there's a certificate or some other thing we would look for if we were to obtain services of a celebrant. How will we know that the person is a certified celebrant?
Every celebrant does receive a certificate. It has the dates because we require renewals. It does have the dates of the certificate is valid for. So yes, you could certainly ask to see that with any kind of a celebrant you were working with.
I wanted to add also was that I've, the weddings I've attended, I don't think any of them have been standard. They've always been weddings that the couple made up themselves. And there's a lot of variety, and it's all very good, very very pleasant.
I'd like to describe a celebration of life I went to a couple of weeks ago. It was somebody I met shortly after I moved to California about 6 years ago. And he had started a group of folk dancers and had land where they met a couple times a year for long weekends, Memorial Weekend and Labor Day weekend. And the celebration of life didn't have any celebrant or religious connotation or anything. It was just kind of free form where, a number of his very close friends organized it, and people got up and, did speeches, and the main hall where the festivities were going on had T-shirts all around the wall, like 50 or 80 different ones that he had worn over the years. And he never dressed up much more than that. He had been a educator in the prison system for a number of years, and very interesting man. And there were probably a couple hundred people at this celebration of life. It was a potluck and just an amazing event. There was folk dancing and other activities, but there was no celebrant. There was no, religious connotation to it.
Sounds wonderful. And there's absolutely no reason that can't be done more often. And when you have a few people who are willing to take on the task of organizing and all the work to get the T-shirts and get the word out and get the folk dancers and all of that, if you have people that are willing and able to do that, that's phenomenal. And there's no reason that you have to have a celebrant or officiant at a memorial service. It can absolutely be done by the group of people. I think what we find fairly often is that a brand new grieving family often isn't in a position to want to take that on. And that's why they seek the services of someone, and they don't feel comfortable knowing how to put that together. And there is no right or wrong. It can be whatever they want. But I think most of the families that I've worked with have been looking for that kind of help and support. But I have heard of some of those other ceremonies like you described, Ray, that are, because they come organically from the community, they are as special can be.
Yeah, this community, had been together for a number of decades and consisted of multi-generational families, 3-4 generations where the kids had grown up and become adults and had children of their own within this community. And they, of course, requested photos, and they had photo albums on one wall of tables that spanned many decades.
It sounds like he was well and truly celebrated and commemorated.
Yes, and quite deserving of that.
The last celebration of someone's life I was at, it was a large gathering of all her friends. Most of them I didn't know. But we ended up, her name was Judy, and we ended up singing Hey Jude at the end of it. But there was a minister presiding over it. I like his comment that he hadn't been to California before, but it's how he expected a California funeral ceremony to take place. A bunch of aging hippies singing Beatles songs. Beatles. Yeah, the only other comment I can make, again, the wedding ceremonies have varied a lot. I've had them in park, I've had them in someone's backyard, presided over by someone who's an ordained Buddhist minister, but wasn't really a practicing Buddhist. It didn't seem to matter. my oldest sister had a regular Catholic ceremony, and we cared because during the standard invocations, she lost her voice at the phrase "for better, for worse." For richer, for poor. She didn't take them for poor. We kidded her about that.
Cute. Greg?
Yes, if one wanted to obtain the services of a celebrant, how would they go about finding one?
On the humanistsociety.org website, there is a Find a Celebrant option. The search is sometimes less than totally helpful, but I would say that's where you start first. And if you don't find what you need there, I would contact through endorsements at aha.org. That's our staff support for the Humanist Society, and they could certainly help direct you to endorse celebrants in your area. Oh,
Well,
Scott's
also
talking, but he's muted.
Yeah,
Ms. Dietrich, thank you for coming and speaking. You sound like someone who can think outside of the box. We've talked about important milestones in our lives, birth and death, and a lot of talk about weddings. And there's an important life event that we haven't mentioned that I guess I just looked up the statistics, 32%, and that's divorce. And I wonder if you have any ideas on a way to have someone's community provide support in a life event like that.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask that question next.
It's a great question. And yes, divorce ceremonies are becoming more and more popular. And you're right, it is a major life event that needs to be, the person or people going through it need to be supported. And the thing about divorce ceremonies is you can do them many different ways, and you can do them at different times during the divorce process, and you can do them with different intentions. So here's a few options. When the couple first decides that they're going to divorce, you can do what I think of as a more general support for the couple, where the community comes together and says, we understand that you're going through this, and we love you. We love both of you individually, and that's not going to change. And you can do that kind of a support ceremony. If the couple has children, I have done a divorce ceremony where I actually wrote it, but I wasn't even there when it happened because it was just for that family with their children. And the intention there, these would be younger than adult children usually. The intention with that ceremony was to say, your dad and I are not going to be married together or living in the same house together anymore, but we love you. We both love you. We will always love you. You know, this has nothing to do with our love for you, nothing that you've done, all of those concerns that children can have in divorce situations. And the parents basically come together and commit to co-parent positively for their children. And the intention there, of course, is to get the children to feel safe and supported and understand what's happening in their world. You can also do a divorce ceremony for the person when they are ready to launch their life as a single again. These are usually done for one or the other of the couple, but not usually together. And the focus might be on name changing. If the person is changing their name, it will be focused on what their new goals and objectives are for their own life. And then it's a matter of supporting them and coming together as a community to say, we're here for you. So all different kinds of divorce ceremonies are possible. I've also seen divorce parties, which can follow a divorce ceremony. I guess it depends on the individual couple. And as in so many of these cases, you're limited only by your creativity and the needs of the people you're trying to serve.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I had one more detail I'd like to add that I didn't think of. When we did it with the red clan plaid, the elegant side used purple satin to indicate that they were the other kind.
Actually, I thought a big part of the ceremony was afterwards, as things were breaking up and we realized we had missed dinner and the restaurant had closed. We had some leftover wedding cake, which made a great meal, actually. Rich chocolate cake.
It was
always
decorated
say-
with green orchids.
They always say, start your dinner with dessert.
Life is uncertain.
All right. Well, with
Thank you
no
for
more
coming.
questions or discussions, I will leave you to the rest of your meeting. Thank you very much for having me today. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And please, if anyone has any follow-up questions or thoughts, I would welcome them. My email is in the chat room.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Kathy.
You're welcome. Good to see you all.